Almost every American cut his teeth on the American Revolution. As children, we were spoon-fed stories about the courageous George Washington braving that grueling winter at Valley Forge, and Nathan Hale strong even in the face of death, going to the gallows. Crying out, "I regret that I have put one life to give for my country. I have but one life to give for my country." Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, Paul Revere, all these names are engraved into the minds of every American school child. Yes, you know names, you know the stories, but do you really know the flavor of the times? Do you know the revolution? Why the revolution happened? Do you know what the philosophy underlies the American War for Independence? Do you know how it affected the world? And finally, do you know how it affected America and American literature? In these pages in your textbook, you'll find a very abbreviated form of the political economic reasons for the Revolutionary War. These colonists began to feel like a nation, calling themselves Americans, and resenting the interference with the British. Colonists wanted to have more control in governing colonies, including more financial control. They resented being taxed by Britain, particularly since they felt they had no voice in the British government. Taxation without representation. These reasons, however, tell only half the story. The colonists had many legitimate complaints against the British government. The many colonized territories have had equally legitimate complaints against their parent countries, yet they have not resorted to revolution. The age of reason is concept of government predisposed the American colonists to view their complaints against Great Britain as sufficient cause for revolt. Online textbook. Michael Gualami, Jean Crevecoeur. As you might have guessed, the name Michel Guillamini Jean de Crevecoeur was French. The original purpose for coming to America was war. He came to fight the French and Indian War. After being wounded and hospitalized during the French and Indian War, he became a surveyor in upstate New York and Vermont. In 1765, he settled down with his family on a large farm in New York. When the American Revolution came around, Crevecoeur found himself between a rock and a hard place because Crevecoeur took neither the loyalist nor the patriot side during the Revolution. He was harassed by both camps. In 1780, he left America for London. It was at this time that Letters from an American Farmer was published. Letters from an American Farmer is a classic statement of the meaning of America to immigrants. It represents a broad, optimistic view of American life. It discusses American classes and institutions, and provides information about vegetation. Crevecoeur praised the simple, unadored religion of America. Here religion demands but little of him. A small voluntary salary to the minister and a gratitude to God. Can he refuse these? According to Crevecoeur, when the poor European immigrants came to America, they were regenerated and began to flourish in the new land. He describes the phenomenon as the American New Man. Crevecoeur cites the following characteristics in his outline of the American New Man. He is either European or the descendant of a European. He has left behind ancient prejudices and embraces a new mode of life. He has moved from poverty to a very difficult type of work rewarded by ample subsistence. Cover felt that immigrants should love the United States better than the country of their birth. Patrick Henry, 1736 to 1799. Patrick Henry delivered two of the best-known speeches in the Revolution. He is famous for his often quoted phrase, "Give me liberty or give me death." Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry's public flaunting of his rebellious attitude put Henry in the hot spot. Virginians who were loyal to England and feared the power of his fiery speeches. The governor of Virginia went so far as to declare Henry to be an outlaw. After the successful revolution, however, Patrick Henry was regarded as a hero and strong leader. He served 5 one-year terms as the governor of Virginia and helped write Virginia Constitution. He delivered his famous speech in the Virginia Convention with the aim of rousing up support from the budding revolution. The speech supported the resolution that a state be immediately put in a posture of defense. The question is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased by the price of chains and slavery? Patrick Henry was a master orator speaker, but carefully yet so forcefully did Henry develop his case for arming Virginia militia that few of his opponents could have been offended by his remarks. Patrick Henry's acknowledgement of the ability and patriotism of those men with whom he disagreed suggests that Henry sought to show sincere respect for those with differing opinions. Another reason that Henry is considered to be such a good speaker is that his speeches were full of passion. The language of Henry's speech seems designed to appeal more to people's emotion than to their intellect. We can see the technique used in the phrase, "There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations and who will raise up friends to fight in battles for us." Patrick Henry's effective use of climax arrangement of the phrases and sentences increasing order of importance or forcefulness is another oratory technique that he employed. His technique is based in the statement, "We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated ourselves before the throne." Henry also used the technique using allusions to the Bible and the Greek mythology. Thomas Paine was an equally fiery character in the saga of the American Revolution. Although Paine did not come to America until 1775 when he was 38 years old, he was a huge advocate of overthrowing British rule in the colonies. It was during his first year in America that he published an article equating slavery with murder and asking the Americans to give it up. Later that same year, he published his pamphlet entitled Common Sense, which advocated armed rebellion against the crown. Common Sense Pain compares the political situation in America to a thief breaking into a house. In 1776, Thomas Paine joined the Continental Army. It was during this time that he wrote his crisis series. He wrote the crisis. Number 1, when he was in a soldier's camp while Washington Army retreated across the New Jersey. The purpose of the crisis paper was to rile up the troops at a time when it looked like defeat by the British was near. The crisis number 1, Paine declared that these subjugate the Americans. The papers was filled with rousing lines that really just make you want to run and take arms up against your oppressors like this. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink. But he whose heart is firm and whose conscience approve his conduct will pursue the principles unto death. Despite the fact that his publications sold thousands of copies, Thomas Paine found himself heavily in debt by the end of the war. So he went to Europe to sell some of the inventions and to make a little cash, only to get himself caught up in the French Revolution, and as if being hated by loyalists in America than the English wasn't enough, Paine also managed to make himself very unpopular with the French revolutionaries. After escaping imprisonment in France, he returned to America, where he found that he was greatly disliked for his support of the French Revolution and his public remarks criticizing organized religion. His American tombstone was declared. His coffin was denied burial in England, and no one knows where he is buried. So much for temporary fame. Thomas Jefferson was a patron of the arts, an architect, an author, a politician, and a diplomat. He was also a champion of equal rights, of intellectual and political freedom, and one of the most important leaders of the revolution. He served as the 3rd President of the United States. Probably his greatest contribution was his drafting of the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was initiated by Richard Henry Lee's motion in Continental Congress on June 17, 1776. John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Sherman, Robert R. Livingston, and Thomas Jefferson all worked on the important document. It was Jefferson, though, who was the chief architect of the Declaration of Independence. 1776. The Declaration of Independence put it into writing because the American people, respecting the opinions of mankind, felt required to state their reasons for separation. Some of these grievances are explained in the following excerpts. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated